these 10 period dramas are perfect, and you've probably missed half of them. I've got baby-faced Henry Cavill, Emily Blunt as a young Queen Victoria, and a couple of historical romances most Americans have never seen. The young Victoria doesn't have the Netflix hype of The Crown, but it delivers its own take on royalty. Emily Blunt leads as Queen Victoria, charting her rise to the throne. She's navigating politics, independence from her mother's advisors, and a real romance with Prince Albert, played by Rupert Friend. The film mixes royal drama with a coming-of-age story, ending with Victoria growing into a monarch who actually knows how to hold power. Casting nailed it. Blunt brings genuine authority to Victoria, and the supporting cast, with Rupert Friend, Paul Bettany, and Mark Strong, just fits the era. The costume and set design is a level above. Costume designer Sandy Powell tracked down actual 19th century fabrics for some pieces, which were so heavy that Blunt fainted during a corseted scene. Production didn't cut corners. Asprey crafted Prince Albert's famous diamond wedding brooch using real gems, under royal supervision. Even the etiquette was real. Blunt trained with a former Buckingham Palace coach to get the posture right. The real reason this movie happened, producer Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, pitched it herself. She was obsessed with Victoria and wanted to see a version that got the emotional side right. It sure did. Hollywood stopped making these kinds of period dramas for a while, but The Count of Monte Cristo brought it back. Jim Caviezel stars as Edmond Dantes, a sailor who gets betrayed by his friend Fernand, played by Guy Pearce. After years in prison, Dantes escapes, finds the Monte Cristo treasure, and comes back as a mysterious nobleman with a single goal: revenge. The production took authenticity seriously. Those prison scenes were actually filmed inside the real Fort St. Nicola in Malta, using areas closed off to the public for centuries. Caviezel handled a lot of his own stunts, including the leap from the prison walls into open water. For the treasure cavern, the crew turned an actual limestone quarry into a cave, filled it with thousands of gold-painted props, and took 3 months to build it. The movie made a few tweaks from Dumas' original, especially in character relationships and the ending, which annoyed some book purists. But for most, it holds up, if only for seeing a young Henry Cavill in just his second film role. Not all period pieces need crowns and castles. Cemetery Junction goes straight into 1970s working-class England, following 3 friends trying to figure out what comes next. One sells insurance, one drifts, one wants out. Typical for a small industrial town where ambition doesn't get you far. The details here are spot on. Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant made it a passion project, using Gervais's own hometown of Reading as the model. The movie's title comes from a real traffic junction near where Gervais grew up. Casting stays grounded. Tom Hughes, Christian Cook, and Felicity Jones anchor the story, never letting it drift into nostalgia or parody. Costumes and props make the era feel real, but the budget went mostly into the soundtrack. Licensing authentic tracks from the 1970s cost more than the cast. Ricky Gervais actually said it himself. Paying for the songs blew past what they spent on actors. Spielberg's West Side Story was set up to be a masterpiece, and in a lot of ways, it actually is. The original 1961 film came out just 4 years after the events it depicted. Spielberg's version, though, arrived 64 years after the time setting of 1957, which meant the production had to work twice as hard to bring the world of old New York back to life for audiences. Spielberg refused to use CGI crowds or green screens. Every extra was there for real. Every street set was built or shot on location. Rita Moreno, who won an Oscar for the original, came back as a new character and served as executive producer. The result is a film that's dynamic from start to finish. Rachel Zegler as Maria delivered standout performance. Critics loved it, but the timing couldn't have been worse. It came out in 2021, when people still weren't going back to theaters after the pandemic. Even with all that care and craft, West Side Story underperformed financially. Spielberg delivered a powerful Romeo and Juliet tragedy with jazz, sweat, heartbreak, and real 1950s New York streets, but the box office never showed up. Sometimes, no matter how good a film is, the timing just destroys its chances. Dorian Gray got a lot of heat for the changes it made to Oscar Wilde's original, but it's got a unique place in adaptation history. It's the first film version that actually brought out the queer themes of the novel, something every earlier adaptation avoided. Ben Barnes took on Dorian, bringing out both the charm and the twisted side, and Colin Firth played Lord Henry, the man who leads Dorian down a path of indulgence. The look of the movie goes all in on gothic drama. It's visually dark, lush, and loaded with style, even on a tight budget. The famous portrait in the film wasn't a digital effect. Artist Christian Hook painted it by hand. He later won the Sky Arts Portrait Artist of the Year competition. And the aged Dorian makeup on Ben Barnes was so horrifying that he wouldn't look at himself in the mirror. A lot of the best banter between Barnes and Firth was improvised, and it gives the film a sharper, edgier feel. Dorian Gray might have gotten slammed by critics, but visually, it's one of the best-looking versions to date. Armando Iannucci's take on David Copperfield, with Dev Patel in the lead, tried something most period dramas never dare. It made Dickens fast, funny, and alive. Dev Patel, who plays David, actually learned 19th century calligraphy and shorthand for his clerk scenes. Nobody can say he phoned it in. The cast is stacked with talent, and the movie is full of energy and sharp humor. The decision to use colorblind casting, Patel playing a character that's always been depicted as white, sparked a lot of hate online. But Iannucci said that was the point. Make Dickens feel like something for today, not just a museum piece. Production even reused sets from BBC dramas like Bleak House and Poldark to keep the budget tight. The film premiered at Toronto in 2019 and critics loved it, but the timing couldn't have been worse. It finally got released in the US in August 2020, when theaters were empty because of the pandemic. On top of that, some audiences pushed back against the casting, so the movie absolutely tanked at the box office. This is a French period film that rarely gets its due, especially in the US, but it deserves way more attention. Claude Chabrol directed, bringing Flaubert's classic novel to life. Normandy, 1850s, every detail in place. Isabelle Huppert plays Emma, the provincial doctor's wife who goes looking for passion and luxury only to find her life unraveling. She didn't just show up and hit her mark. She spent weeks learning rural 19th century manners, even milking cows and riding side saddle. The director insisted on using real period farmhouses, most with no heating, so between takes, the cast had to wrap up in blankets just to stay warm. This one's all about authenticity, including the language. No English, just French, which honestly pulls you in even more. Hollywood always tries to make period pieces accessible by switching to English, but Chabrol didn't play that game. The story is simple but universal. A young woman's boredom, her search for more, and the consequences when she breaks all the rules. In France, the film stirred things up. The government banned TV ads because of the adultery theme, which created a mini scandal. But critics absolutely loved it. The movie even earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Foreign Language Film. Most Hollywood period pieces go straight to old Europe, but Hidden Figures changes the playbook. This one is set in 1961, right in the middle of the space race, following the real story of 3 Black women mathematicians at NASA, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson. Hidden Figures didn't just look right, it felt right. The production went deep for accuracy. They shot scenes in actual NASA facilities, even Glenn's old control room. Henson used Katherine Johnson's real equations on the chalkboard, and Spencer's IBM coding scenes were legit. Real programmers checked the code. Katherine Johnson herself visited the set and called the cast "my girls," leaving everyone in tears. The movie earned plenty of nominations and wins, but somehow it still gets forgotten when people are talking about great Hollywood period dramas. Doesn't change the fact, though, this is a standout. The Portrait of a Lady doesn't get enough credit for how dark and layered it is, both as a novel and a movie. Jane Campion directs, and Nicole Kidman stars as Isabel Archer, a young American woman with a fortune, drawn into a web of manipulation and bad choices in Victorian Europe. Kidman gives one of her best early performances, playing a woman boxed in by both society and the people closest to her. Campion goes for a psychological edge here, so you're always a little off balance, just like Isabel. Janet Patterson handled costumes, hand-dyeing fabrics to get that muted Victorian color palette exactly right. Some critics complained Campion forced the novel into a 90s feminist mold, but the final result is an uncompromising bleak look at privilege, desire, and disappointment, definitely not the usual costume drama. Joe Wright gets a lot of attention for Pride and Prejudice, but his real masterpiece is probably Atonement. The film follows Cecilia, Keira Knightley, and Robbie, James McAvoy, two lovers torn apart by one bad choice made by Cecilia's younger sister. What starts in a quiet English estate unravels into a full-blown tragedy across World War II. Wright went all in on the visuals here. Atonement's Dunkirk beach sequence is a technical marvel, a 5-minute single take with over 1,000 extras rehearsed for 3 days. The production even borrowed actual wartime letters from families for the props. The film got plenty of nominations and wins, but somehow it's still overshadowed by Wright's earlier Austen adaptation, which is either one of the most loved or the most hated adaptations ever, depending on who you ask.